There are no gods at all. There is a certain understanding as to what they are. People do not merely worship nothing. I'm going to say it this way. All worship is received, but it is not all received by God. And there is much worship, listen now, of God that is not received by God. Meaning there are people who have endeavored to worship God, and if you were to ask them, who are you worshiping? They'd say, oh, we're worshiping our God. But it is not received by the one true God, the God of heaven. It is received by someone else. Now, let me throw something out here to you. Music is worship. Music is worship. And so when you turn on your radio this week, ask yourself who you're worshiping. Now that's very practical. I don't know if you understand how helpful that is of what I just gave you. If you just get a hold of that, that'll help you. Not everything that claims the name of God or claims the name of Christian in music is worship received by God. You say God wouldn't, reject a sacrifice, would he? Go back to the first institution or first, mention of it taking place with Cain and Abel. What do you think happened? There was a very clear delineation between a sacrifice that is received, respected by God, accepted by him, and one that is not. So yeah, he absolutely would. Now, the Gentiles, when they were trying to worship God, the Bible said that they were worshiping devils, right? So we've been through that extensively. Hopefully we've laid that out very clearly, what the passage here indicates and what we've learned to be so is that the end result of fallen man is the same or equal to the end result of fallen angels. Both wind up in the lake of fire. And, wouldn't it be something to consider yourself, right? Somebody that, just think about it now, you are the created being angel, right? And here you are looking down on the created being man because they are so much beneath you. And please note, they are beneath. Man is lower than the angels. You understand? You're not strong enough to, I'll take them on. Yeah, good luck with that. I mean, one angel in a night's time dispatched, was it 180,000 Syrians? David's mighty men never came close to what one angel could do. Like, you understand, it's not even the same. And so there's these people that are foolish enough to think they can take on the devil in their own strength or something. You're a fool. You're a fool. Now it is interesting, though, to think that the angels, though they look down upon, and these fallen angels, would look upon man and say, well, they're beneath us. And that's a true statement. But then God would highlight or point out to them, well, you're going to die like them. Your end is going to be like theirs. Well, you think you've elevated yourself. And this is often the case with God, is that when we exalt ourselves, he is very good at abasing. And according to Nebuchadnezzar in Daniel 4, he will abase all that exalt themselves. It's not just that he can, but he will. Now this morning, what we're going to look at in the chapter is the basis of their judgment. So verse 1 says that God standeth in the congregation of the mighty, he judgeth among the gods. Now we're going to look at what he is judging this morning, and I'm going to close this chapter out with something, Lord willing, very practical for you and I. But notice verse 2, here's what he asks. How long will ye judge unjustly and accept the persons of the wicked? Selah. Then he's going to defend the poor and fatherless, do justice to the afflicted and needy, deliver the poor and needy, rid them out of the hand of the wicked. They know not, neither will they understand. They walk on in darkness. all the foundations of the earth are out of course. Amazing here. The verses 2 down through verse 5. Really, it's verses 2, 3, and 4. He's going to list the basis of judgment. Then he's going to give a declaration. Notice, they walk on, or they know not, neither will they understand. You ever asked yourself, why doesn't the devil just get it that he's going to lose? Like, why doesn't he understand at this point where he's at? Well, because they know not, neither do they understand. They don't get it. And you might say, well, that's silly. Well, okay. Consider how many humans don't get it either. What are you doing? Well, okay, remember Jesus used this passage, and while Psalm 82 is using this passage to talk to the fallen angels and saying, look, you're going to be like them, Jesus used this passage and said, man, you're just like them, the fallen angels. And the reality of the situation is, Jesus would tell the Pharisees, you're of your father, the devil. There's a similarity and a connection here that cannot be separated, and that is we think devilish thoughts. You say, not me. No, James 3 said that the wisdom of this world, sensual, devilish. We think the way he thinks. What do you mean? Me first. You ever been selfish before? No, not me. Well, you're a liar too. Hey, guess what? He's a liar from the beginning. You know what you're doing? Another box, just like him. We say, why? Because it is fallen. And really, this is the simplest understanding when it comes to falsehood that you need to get. It's cold today, and my nose has been pouring since last night. Just that cold, It's like, why does your nose run when it's cold? I don't understand that. And I don't need the biology lesson. I'll just wipe it and keep going. But it's like, anyway, it's annoying is what it is. It's messing with me. But consider this, if you would. Consider how many times we strive against the truth. And then take note of this. If you have two things, and really there are only two things. There is that which is truth and all falsehood. And under the umbrella of falsehood lies a lot of different things. There is the truth and there is error. There is that which is true and everything else. And here's what's amazing about the devil is he knows he doesn't have to get you on any specific thing as long as he gets you on something. And you say, why? Because anything that gets you away from the truth is equally as damning to you. So you go, well, I would never this, but I this. And we'll justify it and say, that's not as bad. Well, what is the wages of sin? Do you understand? It doesn't say the wages of really bad sin is death. And the wages of not so bad sin is, a slap on the wrist. That's not what it says. And so do you understand? You go, well, I'm not a murderer, but we're all liars. And you've been proud. And guess what? The devil was proud and a liar, and he's a murderer. And so we need to understand that we're not close to good. We are the antithesis of it. We are exactly opposite of good. You say, what do you mean by that? I mean that which is good is God, and we are fallen. And so we don't think right. We don't act right. We don't even understand how bad we are. We don't even grasp it. Have you ever looked, I don't care which side of the aisle you are on, have you ever looked across the aisle, whether it's a political issue or a social issue or whatever, have you ever looked across the aisle and went, how do they not see it? You ever been there? You know what? They're looking at you the same way. They are. And here's what's interesting about that. You go, I don't get how they can't see it. But I promise you this, the God of heaven is looking at you going, yeah, you don't get it. And the sum total of what you get, you've received from Him. I mean, everything that you have right, every single thing, you didn't get it on your own. He's given it. Because you can't reason your way into truth. If you could reason your way into truth, then all your PhDs would be the most religious people in America. But you can reason your way out of truth, which is why all the majority of the educated people in America are anti-God. You say, oh, that's just because they're smarter. Not a chance. Now, notice so they know not, verse 5, neither will they understand. They walk on in darkness. There's nothing better than the blind leading the blind. And can I just tell you, in the dark, you're both blind. But here it is. This is how it's supposed to be. Isn't it amazing? Just think of human nature. I mean, there's probably too much time being spent on this verse, but my goodness, it's so revelatory of how we are. 12-year-old kid looks to a 12-year-old kid to tell him what life's about. Boy, all you old people don't understand what life's about, the ones who've lived it. But here's my buddy. They've got it figured out. They know what's best. Y'all just don't even understand what life's about. Perhaps you just think more highly of yourself than you ought to. You're 12. You say, I'm not 12, I'm 13. Exactly. You're 25. You're 35. Right? You're 50. You're 60. Brother Gil sometimes like, oh, I'm not as strong as you. I said, that's nonsense. You've made it to your age. I haven't yet. He's stronger than me until proven otherwise. You understand, he's come through life. We look at it and go, boy, we're the ones that have life. He's got more of it than you do. There's more on his record than mine. But we don't look at it the right way. And as a result, all the foundations of the earth are out of course. So look at the bedrocks of society. The foundation are out of course. Isn't it interesting? And look, we love our country. We're grateful to be in the country we are. Do you understand our country boldly proclaims, I'm proud to be an American? One of those things that God hates, pride. You say, oh, you don't like being American. I literally just said the opposite. But it is the bedrock of our society. We're proud to be Americans. How about this one? America's foundation, I'm talking about her start, was rebellion. We rebelled against the King of England. Like, that's not a debate. Well, rebellion is as the sin of... Oh, see, we don't like it in that context. Hold on now. You're messing with me. Do you understand? You say, oh, so God's against America. I didn't say that. I'm just telling you that all the foundations are out of course. You got this idea that somehow, oh, we've got this thing figured out. We've determined what the very best way of having a society is. Do you understand? Our First Amendment, though we're very grateful for it, it allows us to do this, is not a scriptural thing. What do you mean? Find me one place where God's like, oh, don't worry about all those other gods. They're good too. It's not how it works. It's not how God operates. It's how our government operates. They're all the same. And look, I'm glad because it affords us this opportunity, but we're not going to elevate it to the level of Scripture. There are a lot of Christians who think that the Constitution's the Bible. It isn't. They're like, well, it's the next best thing. You have devalued the Bible if you think they're on the same plane. Like, man, you are anti-America. No, I'm not. I'm just trying to show, this is our country. Why would I talk about Romanian's constitution? You're like, do they have one? My point exactly. My point exactly. Why would I talk about somewhere else? Oh, Russia, bad guy. Well, hold on now. We like to look other places, but I'm telling you, turn inward and see. By the way, isn't it interesting that in Russia it's still illegal to have gay marriage? Well, what side of that aisle do you think God's on? Anyway, that's not in the notes. I promise you, none of that is where I'm trying to get to. Notice verse 2, please. How long will ye judge unjustly? So he's going to judge among the gods. Right, verse 1, he judgeth among the gods. And here's his question. How long will ye judge unjustly? Isn't it interesting that the basis of judgment is their judgment? He's going to judge them for how they judge. Isn't that consistent with scriptures you're familiar with? Give and it shall be given unto you, good measure, right? You understand that's in the context of judgment. With what measure ye meet, it shall be measured to you again. Judge not, lest ye be judged. All of that's within the same context. And here he is, going to judge them. And notice he asks this question, how long will you judge unjustly and accept the persons of the wicked? Let me see. Come with me to Ecclesiastes chapter 5. Let's go here. Let's see if there's any of this that I can skip through a little bit. Now let me show this to you in a very practical way. You're in Ecclesiastes 5. So we have declared an injustice has occurred in our society. So as a result, let us go break into, loot and burn someone else's property that had nothing to do with it to begin with. All in the name of justice. Do you not realize how foolish that is? What do you mean? I mean, we are marching through the streets, justice for this one, justice for that one, justice for this, all while simultaneously causing injustice after injustice after injustice. And here's the rebuttal to that. Yeah, well, they started it. Like you're a 5-year-old petulant child. No, I'm just mad. Right. Like the petulant child. That's our society today. By the way, I see a lot of Christians with the same spirit. What do you mean? Well, so-and-so hurt my feelings. So I'm not even going to church with them anymore. Good idea. Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead and forsake the assembling of yourselves together, breaking the commandment of God because somebody hurt you. That'll show them. But it's who we are, isn't it? That's how we operate. Ecclesiastes 5, look at verse 8 if you would, please. If thou seest the oppression of the poor, and violent perverting of judgment, and justice in a province, marvel not at the matter, for he that is higher than the highest regardeth. Notice, and there be higher than they. What do you mean? Well, if thou seest the oppression of the poor, and the violent perverting of judgment, and justice in a province, marvel not at the matter, for he that is higher than the highest regardeth, and there be higher than they. Do you understand that God is the ultimate authority over authorities? It is why he is declared to be the King of kings and Lord of lords. Now, please get this. You are not a King of kings or a Lord of lords, but you feel like you are, or else you wouldn't disparage your president. Because it was against the law for the Jew to even speak ill of the high priest. Revilest thou the high priest? I knew not that he was the high priest. You understand? That was contrary to the law. To revile the high priest. Yeah, well, he wasn't doing right. Wasn't an excuse to do so. You say, yeah, but it's Joe Biden. Or it's Donald Trump. Or Barack Obama. You realize I've just gone back through the last three, right? I don't think we need to go any further. But one side said, yeah, but it's your guy. And the other side goes, yeah, but it's your guy. And God's going, you really don't see who's in charge? Now listen, it does not mean that every decision that a president, king, governor makes is correct. We're noticing in the verse, if thou seest the oppression of the poor, the violent perverting of judgment and justice. That's injustice if ever there was. But can I tell you that there are those above? And now I'm not going to get into, I'm just going to throw this out I'm positing something to you here. Because I would submit to you that the verse says that there be higher, for he that is higher than the highest regardeth. And that means that there's someone over man's highest authority. But notice, it is not God that is that one he's talking about, because then he goes on to say that there be higher than they. And what I'm going to submit to you is that there is the height of man's authority. There's also a spiritual authority. And then there's the one that is in charge of them. And that's what he's dealing with here. Because the prince of Persia has a spiritual entity attached to it, but he's still subject to God. And the king's heart's ultimately in the hand of the Lord. But do you understand that the devil claimed authority over the kingdoms of the world and had such? They were given to him. Come with me to James. We'll do it this way. Go to James chapter 3. James 3, and I'm going to have to hurry here. James 3, look at verse 1. My brethren, be not many masters, knowing that we shall receive the greater condemnation. My brethren, be not many masters, knowing that we shall receive the greater condemnation. Do you understand that the higher up you go, the greater amount of responsibility you have. Colossians 4, the greater you will be judged. So watch this. God has an authority structure put in place everywhere. Everywhere that God is, He ordains authority. You realize God is not against authorities. So in the home, He has an authority structure set up. And in case you're wondering, we'll go ahead and let you know it's God, right? Christ, the man, the woman, the children. That's the authority structure that God has set up. And you know what's amazing about that? Children, obey your parents in all things. This is well-pleasing to God. Then you get asked this question. Well, what happens if your parents tell you to do something that's wrong? Great question. Here's the answer. You will be responsible for your obedience, not their decision-making. So then you have wife submitted to the husband. Well, what happens if he's not a spiritual man? Ladies, you will be responsible for how you submit to your husband, not the direction or decisions that he makes. Now, when you go outside of the authority structure, guess what? You lose the protection of God's authority structure. Oh, I see what you're doing. There's no covering now. Why? Because we receive the greater condemnation. Colossians 4, verse 1. Masters, give unto your servants that which is just and good, or equal, knowing that ye also have a master in heaven. You understand there's more than just the physical. More than just the physical at play here. All right, Romans 13. Romans 13. Well, I don't think my pastor's doing something that's right, so it's my job to tell him where he's wrong. Really? Please listen. Are you sure? Do you understand that the Bible gives ways to rebuke an elder? Why? Well, it's very simply. We're not above rebuke. We're not above being wrong. Do you understand? We're just as much capable of wrong as anybody else in here. But ultimately, who's responsible for my wrongdoing? You or me? Can God judge or deal with leaders who mess up? Go look at the books of 1 Samuel through 2 Chronicles and come back to me with an answer. What do you mean? Spiritual leaders? Eli, Hophni, Phinehas, right? You can go down a list. Spiritual leaders that mess up? What about governmental leaders like kings and such? And isn't it interesting? When the prophets try to take control of the kingship, they're out of line. And when the kings try to enter into the priest's duties, they're out of line. And God gets onto both of them through there. Both of them. It's interesting. See, we get this God complex sometimes in our lives. We get the idea that, well, it's my job to keep everybody else in line. You can't even keep you in line. You really think it's your job to worry about your brother or sister down the street? I mean, truly. How many of us would be honest enough this morning to acknowledge in our home, just our home, yeah, there's an issue or two. I'm being generous. There may be at least one. How about that? Anybody else? A few, you're like, not my home. My wife told me there isn't. Like. So what authority would you claim to have in somebody else's home? Watch this. I'm your pastor. I don't have authority in your home. I'm not the authority in your home. Well, Pastor, can you come tell my kids to do this because my husband? No. Why? He's the authority there. And how foolish would it be of me to say to your kids, don't listen to God's authority, but come to church and listen to God's authority. But it's just the same foolishness when I say don't listen to God's authority in government. So I don't like their laws. There's one higher than them. Say it's a violent perverting of judgment and justice. They'll be higher than they. Romans 13. Let every soul be subject unto the higher powers. For there is no power but of God. And the powers that be, are ordained of God. They stole the election. So I don't have to submit. Whosoever therefore resisteth the power, that's just next verse. Resisteth the ordinance of God. And they that resist shall receive to themselves damnation. Well, wait a minute. They're the ones that are wrong. Notice verse 3. For rulers are not a terror to good works, but to the evil. Wilt thou then not be afraid of the power? Do that which is good, and thou shalt have praise of the same. Do you understand that if you go back to the book of Job, we're not going there, we're staying here. But if you go back to the book of Job, the devil had no power over Job while he's doing right until God allowed him to have such. Why? Because Job did that which was right. Meditate on that later. Do that which is good, and thou shalt have praise of the same. For he is the minister of God to thee for good. But if thou do that which is evil, be afraid, for he beareth not the sword in vain. For he is the minister of God, a revenger to execute wrath upon him that doeth evil. A minister of God. When you think of a minister of God, be honest, most of us think of a pastor. Most of us, right? Minister. That's the world's view of what a minister is. And it's not always like that's not the terminology we always use. But do you understand here? You make the case, and I would submit to you that he's really dealing with the devil there. A revenger to execute wrath upon him that doeth evil. You say, I don't know about that. Well, okay, hold your place here. We'll come right back. Go to Ephesians 6. Let every soul be subject unto the higher powers. Right? Isn't that how Romans 13 starts? The powers that be are ordained of God. Is that not the verse? All right. Ephesians 6, look at verse 12. For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against... Do you understand? He said those are not flesh and blood. You say, oh, so anybody that's in power is not a human? That's not what I said. But there are those that are higher than the highest. There is a spiritual power over the physical. And to dismiss that those powers are not spiritual is to just dismiss the totality of what he's teaching us. Against the rulers of the darkness of this world. They walk on in darkness. This world. Against spiritual wickedness in high places. Do you understand that men don't always have to get together and come up with a scheme of doing things against God when it's the same spirit that is influencing them from a distance? What do you mean? I mean, this one and this one don't have to call each other. They don't have to have a meeting in a back room somewhere for the same spirit that works in the children of disobedience to produce the same effect in both of them. You say, is there a conspiracy? Yeah, but it may not be physical. Why? Because there is a spiritual wickedness in high places. You say, but it might be physical. Yeah, it might be. The kings of the earth set themselves, took counsel against the Lord and against His anointed. But maybe those physical counsels against the Lord are taking place because of the spiritual. By the way, if that's the tribulation, it's 100% because of the spiritual there, isn't it? All right, Romans 13. Verse 5, wherefore ye must needs be subject, not only for wrath, but also for conscience sake. Look, it shouldn't just be that you're doing right because you're going to get punished if you don't. You ought to also have just a conscience of doing right. And so for this cause, pay ye tribute also. Oh, there it is. Those people, well, we're a Christian. We don't have to pay taxes. Well, I'm an American. I shouldn't have to pay taxes. I'd submit to you that's probably true. Nonetheless, when they say pay your taxes, what should you do? Pay your taxes. Jesus wasn't above paying taxes. You ought to pay them. You say, should we have to pay taxes as an American? No. As a Christian? Absolutely. You say, I think they charge us too much in taxes. I'm with you. So what are you going to do? Pay them. Render therefore all their dues. Tribute to whom tribute is due, custom to whom custom, fear to whom fear, honor to whom honor. Know this. I tell you what. All right, come back to Psalm 82. I'm going to have to hurry. Psalm 82. I really wanted to get done today. And so we're still going to try. Verse 3. Notice who he tells, what he approaches here. He says, defend the poor and fatherless. Do justice to the afflicted and needy. Deliver the poor and needy. Rid them out of the hand of the wicked. Do you understand that their role seems to be, and we're not even going to get to all the other places, but 1 Peter 3 deals with it. Here, it seems to be that the authority is in place to punish the wicked and praise the good. Punishment of evildoers and praise of the good. So that's how this thing's supposed to work. The problem is those that were in charge have fallen. You say, man, no, I'm talking about the angels. The problem is even the spiritual entities that were given this responsibility are now accepting the persons of the wicked. They're not judging righteously. And as a result, you see wicked men in power. And it seems like they're not being punished. Wasn't that the problem Asaph had in Psalm 73? Right? He's like, man, when I considered this, it caused me great hardship, and I don't understand it. Why? I'll tell you why. The foundations are out of course. It's not how it's supposed to be. But don't think for a second that somehow they're getting away with it. God's going to take care of it. He'll judge. And by the way, He judges with righteous judgment. Revelation 16, Revelation 19, when He comes with righteous judgment. In fact, He even deals with that in John 7 when He tells them to judge righteous judgment. You see, they were worried about this thing where a man came into the temple there and he had a withered hand and Jesus healed him on the Sabbath. And He's like, which of you having an ox? And he begins to point out the hypocrisy of a people that will let their cattle out on that same day, because we got to be kind to animals. And well, my ox is, fallen into a pit or a ditch, so I have to help them get out. And it's the Sabbath, and that's okay. But here's a man who is withered in his hand, and actually he said that he'd been bound by the devil. But you don't want God to do that on the Sabbath day. And He said, y'all need to judge righteous judgment. You got to think this through. You're not thinking right about this. So what we will find is that this group of people, the poor, the fatherless, the poor and needy, the afflicted and needy, they are people groups that God pays attention to. In fact, pure religion and undefiled before God, you know what it is? Visiting the widows in their affliction and the fatherless. James 1, he talks about the widows, he talks about the afflictions, he talks about the fatherless, he brings up the poor in James 2. All those are right there in the same passage. God pays attention to them all the way through. And one of the things that you'll find within the law was this: how you treat the poor, how you treat the needy, how you treat the afflicted, how you treat the fatherless, He'll judge you on. He's watching how you treat them. What He tells us, Matthew 4, He said He came to minister to them. Matthew 20, for sake of time, I'm not even going to get here. Matthew 25, He deals with this. All three places He tells us to minister to them. He's given us the example of ministering to these groups. Then He even said that when you minister to the poor, the hungry, the thirsty, He said, as much as you've done it on one of the least of these, my brethren, you've done it unto me. So here's the example. You're supposed to be ministering to them. Now watch. Hebrews 1, come here quickly. So he tells us we're supposed to be ministering to these people. But notice what the angel's job was. And then we're going to make one practical conclusion to this. Hebrews 1. Look at verse 7. And of the angels he saith. You there? All right. And of the angels he saith, who maketh his angels spirits and his ministers a flame of fire. You know what he called them? Ministers. Look at verse 13. But to which of the angels said he at any time, sit on my right hand until I make thine enemies thy footstool? He didn't. Are they not all ministering spirits? Who? The angels. Are they not all ministering spirits sent forth to minister for them who shall be heirs of salvation? Aren't the angels supposed to be ministering spirits to minister? Do you see how he's wording that? Okay, so watch. They've been tasked with the responsibility of ministering spirits, to minister. And then here's what he told you and I. You can go look it up. Matthew 4, Matthew 20, Matthew 25. He tells us to minister to these people. You know what we're supposed to be? Ministers. Romans 13, you know what he called those powers? Ministers of God. Defend the poor, fatherless, to do justice, to deliver the poor and needy, to rid them out of the hand of the wicked, to do justice to the afflicted and needy, Do you understand that here's the contrast of that? You ready? Be sober, be vigilant, for your adversary the devil, as a roaring lion, walketh about, seeking whom he may devour. Well, here's what he's going to judge them on. Defending, doing justice, delivering, and ridding them from the hand of the wicked. And you know what he's doing? He's devouring. In 2 Timothy 2:26, it talks about those who are taken captive by the devil at his will. So instead of ridding them out of the hand of the wicked, instead of delivering them, instead of defending them, do you know what he's doing? Taking them captive. Devouring them. Instead, watch this now, of ministering to those who were put under him, he is causing them to serve him. The minister wants to be ministered to instead of ministering. So the devil wants your best. He wants you to pay him. He uses his pull and his weight to elevate and advance those who are serving him, not ministering to the poor and needy. Don't the rich get richer? Doesn't the corrupt get more corruption? Doesn't it look like, boy, it's all out of whack, right? Watch, it is out of whack. It is out of course. So that's terrible. I know. Luke 12. Here's the application. We're done. Luke 12. That wicked devil. Good for nothing. Low down. Sorry. Rotten scoundrel. Boy, we've got no problem when it's him, right? But what about when it's you? Even the Son of Man came not to be ministered unto, but to minister. You ever wanted to be ministered unto? Come on, be honest. Husbands, haven't you ever wanted to be ministered unto by your wives instead of ministering unto them? Okay, that was way too quiet. Husbands, haven't you ever wanted to be ministered unto by your wives instead of ministering unto them? Be not many masters, for we shall receive the greater condemnation. What about her? Husbands, have you loved like Christ loved the church? All right, then, why would you point at her submission? It's a top-down thing. Wives, have you ever felt taken advantage of by your children? I'm not appreciated around here. You want to be ministered unto instead of ministering. Luke 12. Lead balloon. Verse 42. We're talking about the Lord's return. And Peter's trying to dodge a bullet in verse 41. He's like, you talking to us or them? And that's really what he's asking. He's like, this is for them, right? Just so we're clear. And so the Lord says in verse 42, who then is that faithful and wise steward, whom his Lord shall make ruler over his household? So he's in charge, right? Would we all agree with that? All right, notice the purpose. To give them their portion of meat in due season. You know why he's in charge? To minister. You know why Joseph was in charge of Egypt? To minister. What do you mean? There's 7 years of famine coming, and somebody has to minister to the world during that 7 years. Okay, Joseph, you're in charge. Oh, that's because I'm the best there's ever been. No. That's not the point. What's the point? Minister. Don't take advantage. Minister. So watch. He's been given charge to give them their portion of meat in due season. Verse 43. Blessed is that servant whom his Lord, when he cometh, shall find so doing. So you're ministering when the Lord comes back. Good. But watch. Of a truth I say unto you that he will make him ruler over all that he has. So there's advancement. But, and if that servant say in his heart, remember where it started with the devil? You remember where it started with the devil? My Lord delayeth his coming. He's not doing things like I would. My Lord delayeth his coming, and shall begin to beat the men servants and maidens, and to eat and drink and to be drunken. You know what he's changed? Watch. He's changed from ministering to them to now being mad that they're not ministering to him. This isn't about feeding you. It's about, I'm supposed to eat and drink, be drunken, excess. Instead of going out, it's coming in. Mistreatment of others. The very ones he was placed over to minister to, he is now lording over as if they are beneath him. Verse 46, the Lord of that servant will come in a day when he looketh not for him, and in an hour when he's not aware, and will cut him asunder, and will appoint him his portion with the unbelievers. Doesn't go well for him, does it? Do you understand he's being judged based upon his judgment? Can I tell you? When we look at the devil, we can see it. Boy, he's going to get his, isn't he? All his mistreatment of the world, his confounding of the nations. Boy, God's going to exact judgment. Okay, why is he going to? Because what he was made for, service. Serving others, ministering. He turned it around and wanted it to be ministered to him instead. By the way, he looked at the world and offered it to Jesus. All the kingdoms of the world are mine. Whoever said they were yours? They were placed under your authority so you could minister to them. But you usurped the authority and made it about you instead of about him. And here's where every problem in church happens. Every single one. When we get the idea we are to be ministered to instead of ministering to others. Well, you know, y'all just don't have enough for our kids, so, because it's about you. All right, so there's not enough for children here. Wonderful. What are you doing about it? What do you mean? What are you ministering to other children? Well, no, it's about you taking care of mine. The problems happen that way. Why? Because it's the same thing. It's the same heart, and it happens every time. You ever been mad about things at your house? Guess what? You feel offended. Why? Because they didn't do. My Lord, delayeth this coming. It's not happening like I thought it was supposed to happen. And why am I always left out? And how come I'm not treated better? And me, my. It's devilish. It's devilish. It's an encouraging message this morning, but it's really this simple. Get over yourself. I mean, it really is, isn't it? It's lovely. Now look, because one of my favorite verses in all the Bible, go to Luke 17. Oh, we're going to read these and be done. I know. I'm trying to close out Psalm 82. It's just taking me longer. Luke 17. Verse 7, but which of you, having a servant plowing or feeding cattle, will say unto him by and by, when he's come from the field, go and sit down to meat? And will not rather say unto him, make ready wherewith I may sup, and gird thyself, and serve me till I have eaten and drunken, and afterwards thou shalt eat and drink? Doth he thank that servant because he did the things that were commanded him? I trow not. You know what Jesus just said? You don't get credit for doing your job. You shouldn't expect praise for doing your job. In fact, what you should expect for doing your job is another job. Now, I don't have time, but you need to think about that. What is the reward for service? More service. You look at service as if it's somehow a punishment. Parents, you can't teach your kids that. You haven't done right, so I'm going to make you take the trash out. No. It is a privilege to take the trash out. You get to serve. When my kid starts running his mouth about taking the trash out, and I say, don't worry, I'll get it. Why? Because you've lost your privilege of service. Verse 10. So likewise ye, when ye shall have done all those things which are commanded you, say, we are unprofitable servants. We have done that which was our duty to do. You know what servants are supposed to do? Serve. And when we miss or change our role into being served, there will be judgment for it. We will be judged on our service, not on being served. Father, we love you and we thank you for your word. Lord, I pray that you'd help us, God, to have the right spirit and attitude